Hi there. Well, I decided on a lazy Sunday evening that I would talk about INFJs regarding relationships and all the functions that an INFJ has. And I was wondering if maybe some people out there could relate or not. Specifically INFJs, but perhaps other people with similar functions. Um, I will confess, I have always had difficulty with relationships. I see a lot of people out there, including INFJs, who seem to manage to land a relationship. For me, I am confident at this point it's not to do with, my looks or my intelligence or anything like that. By and large, the reason I am single for long periods of time is because of me and nobody else, at least in large part. It's because of me. So, I do know that all types have their challenges, but one thing I think about INFJs, and one thing that makes them particularly rare is, to be perfectly honest, we are not so practical in the practical world, in the real world, in real time. This is why we're considered idealists, because ideals essentially kind of float out there. They don't really have too much real world context. It's hard to nail any of that stuff down. And I know other types are idealists, but I venture to say that INFJs are probably the poster boys for idealists, in that I don't think we just don't function so well in real time. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I hope to kind of what do I want to say, wax philosophical about that, by just kind of going down the list of functions that an INFJ has. The first would be the strongest, which is an INFJ is introverted intuition. And introverted intuition is, I suppose, one of the most perplexing and mysterious and elusive types of thinking. To be honest, I didn't even know it existed until I got to know of Myers-Briggs. I always thought I was like a feeler because I always felt kind of so sensitive, and I never felt felt smart, as in like math and things like that. I was always Instead, I was always seeing a lot of stuff that a lot of people didn't, and I didn't see a lot of stuff that people did. And that's introverted intuition for you. I suppose that's intuition in general, but certainly introverted intuition, because it's sort of doubly mysterious. It doesn't even have an objective application to it, where you say, where people could at least entertain the leaps and bounds with you. You have to actually, subjective information means that you have to first actually experience it and then incorporate it, then store it, file it, and then remember it. But intuition goes one step further by I couldn't even explain how that part. It goes one step further by fusing all the subjective past experiences into future possibilities. So it is really just the, I don't know, the mysterious of mysterious kind of functions. And it's no wonder that when you're growing up as a kid, you're not going to know about it. It's not like they're teaching you that in school exactly. um, and I think that, based on this kind of thing, one thing I learned about INFJs is that we are intuits first. Um, it's a really big deal and a big revelation because, as I said, I used to think I was this kind of I don't know, like touchy-feely, sensitive, kind of I don't know how to put it, but not a very strong person. I didn't feel that way anyway when I was growing up, and at the same time, I never felt I was smart either. I mean, it really kind of sucks because, you feel like at least if you're going to be not very, you can't be the jock, then at least you can be the nerd, and it's like you can't even, I got pretty bad grades in school. Not terrible, but it was like C average kind of grades. And believe me, if I wasn't pushed harder, I probably would have gotten D's and F's a lot. Because I was just kind of in my own little world all the time. And what I didn't realize is that, that was just the realm of introverted intuition. And I thought I was just kind of this, dreaming, whatever, person that didn't really have anything to offer, to be honest with you. And it's still challenging sometimes to find the value in that, although I think that we often find the value by accepting our accepting the desire that we have for solitude. And I don't know about you, but as an INFJ, I just can't get enough, it would seem. Can't get enough solitude. I'm sure there is a point where I would hit my limits and everything and need to come out of my cave and all that. But for the most part, life seems to want to bring you out of the cave sooner than you'd like to. And so I always find myself yearning to kind of get back. And in regards to relationships, this is a big factor, of course, because if you have somebody who wants to spend time with you and, wants to be present with you, this is a big one. I mean, this is the biggest, of course, because if you're an intuit first and a feeler second, then this can complicate things, especially when it's like, okay, now I've given you your space, and now what have you done? Did you do anything productive? Well, I thought about how the universe works and all this kind of stuff. It's like, what? Like, you're blowing me off for, what are you even blowing me off for? Like, you're not even going to a baseball game, right? You want to just, I mean, what do you do all day? It's like, oh, I read and I think about things. I don't know. I can't really tell you exactly, but it's like, well, you spent the whole day, and you didn't even want to see me, and it's been like a week, and blah, 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 and, oh, man, like, so I think there's a lot of misunderstanding in general, but certainly with relationships, there's a very big potential to misunderstand an introverted intuit, big time. I suspect the INTJ goes through this a lot too, and because we both share introverted intuition on the same scale, basically. Okay, so try and move this along into extroverted feeling. That's our second function, and I guess this is the real blessing and the curse of INFJs that we all know about. It's it's almost like a very strange, it's like if we were handed out the functions, it's almost like this one was just kind of like, okay, so we got introverted intuition, and here's extroverted feeling, like, it's almost like we got to the end of the line, and it's just like, yeah, we have this kind of, weird combination of things, like, so here you go, that's what you get. It's really? Thanks, dude. And it turns out we're like the 1%, and now everybody's all gaga about it, and it's just like, really, dude? Like, no, you don't want to be, you don't really want this, sorry. Maybe you want to pretend, but you don't really want to be this, sorry. It's, I mean, I'm not trying to be a victim about it, it's just that, it's just a very strange combination, I think. I think I'd rather be an INTJ, honestly, if I had my pick, because then I'd just be able to be, like, contemplating the universe, and then if somebody kind of, like, stepped to me, I'd be like, well, you're just retarded, and then that's it, right? Like, wow, what a dumbass, and then go on back to my life. But it doesn't really work that well with INFJs. If somebody kind of steps to us, sort of like, "Oh, you're not paying attention to me," it's really hard to just kind of be like, "Wow, you're being really stupid, and you're not making any sense." And gosh, like, why don't you come back when you calm down, and then just, kind of drop it, and have a clear, defined boundary of somebody else's emotions. And this is a big one for me. Myers-Briggs was so helpful for me to learn that there was actually a difference between introverted feeling and extroverted feeling. I had absolutely no clue about that. Even when I started studying Myers-Briggs a little bit, it took me forever, like, wait a minute, FE and all this, like, what do you mean extroverted feeling? I mean, there's only, essentially, our emotions are all inside us, literally, I mean, no matter what, it's us who's essentially generating these emotions. We could argue, of course, like, no, it's all psychic energy or something. Well, that's for another topic, and I'm open-minded to those things. I certainly understand. I'm not even going to get into that part because I totally understand where a lot of INFJs are coming from on that note. But I think it's safe to say that a lot, if not most of our emotions are always internally generated, and so the idea of external feeler was something totally foreign to me, because I used to just think those were my emotions. I always like I said before, I always considered myself a feeler first, because I kind of disregarded my primary function as just whatever. I'm just some kind of spaced out dreamer. So the rest of the only other thing I kind of had really was like, oh, I'm sort of sensitive, and but I always thought like they were kind of my emotions, like they were that they, I don't know, like I was that they were geared toward me, but that was the huge revelation, is to realize that external feelers are hardwired to feel other people's emotions, basically. We're hardwired to, if nobody else is around, stimulating you with things and other, whatever, then essentially INFJs and probably a lot of other FEs don't really have any emotions. And I know that might sound kind of controversial and whatever, but I would invite you, if you really are an external feeler, to stop and consider, like, how do I feel, like on a, just at any given moment, what am I feeling? Like me, not not about anybody else, anything else. In other words, you could also put the question like this, like, what do I want? And you may actually find that you don't have a very good answer for that. And that's not me trying to be like, haha, check it out, you suck. It's just, to me it was a big revelation because I can go all day feeling things and I realize like whether I'm conscious or unconsciously acknowledging it, it's usually all about other people, all totally about other people. Somehow it's like, and so with a very small, very very small aspect of me in there, but the me part is like totally. If I try and conceive of my own feelings and all this, like find that they're weak, they're half baked, they're almost non-existent. Like it's almost I almost have to force myself to like look at it, and it's real kind of trippy because I know that if you're INFJ, you feel a lot, all the time. But I invite you to consider what those feelings are about, and usually it's who they're about, really. And so in the case of relationships, it's real tough because you're torn between really wanting to, foment and chill out in the intuition realm, and just be alone and be completely, able to do your own thing. And on the other hand, if you have somebody who is not even very demanding, but just even moderately, maybe you'd say reasonably demanding about your time and about all that stuff, you're gonna feel it. And unless that person is really, really understanding that your partner, whoever, could be a friend even, but especially romantic relationships and things like that, unless they are very, very understanding and really kind of go out of their way to make it clear that they're understanding, it's going to be real hard for someone like an INFJ to be to not really feel it and feel things like guilt or just overwhelmed or or even get really scared and just kind of buck, just basically run away, you could put it that way. Usually there's more tact involved, but essentially just end the relationship. Or conversely, just stay in there for the wrong reasons and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's my experience, at least. That's it's hard because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. It's real tough. So yeah, that's extroverted feeling, and again, it's really amazing. I didn't know that there was a concept of either one. I mean, conversely, introverted feeling, it's like, wait, you mean you can kind of keep your feelings are all like on the inside? And I mean, I thought that was just for like, football jocks or some crap, some cop or something, which I guess, it could be, but just there's a lot of people, including, INTJs, for example, they have a lot more internal, steady internal feeling, and INFPs, for example, they actually have an even stronger emotional component than INFJs, but they're all internal, and so anything that you see from an INFP tends to just be spilling over from the inside. Whereas what you see from INFJs tend to seem like it's really spilling over, but actually it's just all on the outside, so to speak. It's, in a sense, it's ironically very superficial, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way. I just mean it in a literal way. It's really kind of out there on the plains of the real world. But what makes that so, once again, kind of weird about INFJs is that the most tangible aspect of that they have is emotions. That's the most objective that they can be in the real world, and yet it's the least objective thing in the real world. It's sort of like doubly, again, it's sort of like a double whammy, just like introverted intuition, extroverted feeling is, it's hard to even call it an objective, what do you call it, an objective quantity or something like that. I mean, extroverted thinking, for example, makes more sense. There's 1, 2, 3 rocks. The third rock is heavier than the second, and the second is heavier than the first. I don't know. That just all makes sense. It's very easily to quantify and objectify those things. Objectifying emotions, which are so often subjective in the first place, it's just like, come on, you really want to be the rarest type? You must be crazy. Okay, so moving along to introverted thinking. Now, I don't know really what to say too much about introverted thinking. I've done some, fair amount of study on it, but I guess being tertiary, it's neither here nor neither here nor there for me. I mean, it is in the end. Excuse me, but it's I don't know. It's Dave's superpowers. If you look his YouTube stuff up, he said that it's sort of like the software that or the hard drive that spins in an INFJ. It's sort of like the platform of which all the INFJ mysterious powers kind of spin on. So it's not exactly, obviously it's not our main function, but it allows us to do quite a bit of what we do, which is, I guess, synthesize external feeling and into internal intuition. But again, it's internal, and so it's subjective, and it doesn't happen in real time. It has to be archived and processed and on and on and on. So on the one hand, you have this sort of human component of emotion tugging out at you, making its own sort of demands in the real world, and especially relationships. It's like, well, why don't you spend time with me? Or, hey, let's go out here and do this. And really, the only thing you can do with that is kind of take it in and archive it, and then fuse it into greater possibilities into the future. And it's just like the concept of like going to the movies or to watch a game. This is why I believe, okay, and this is why INFJs just have such an inability to suffer the trivial nature of things. It's because, hey, why don't we go to the movies? It's like, let me get back to you on that, okay? Because the amount of emotional pull that somebody might actually put out there that you feel with your external feeling eventually gets processed through, internal thinking and intuition. And it's like, I think the reason why INFJ types can feel so indignant from such a trivial thing is because it's like, essentially it breaks down to, why are you busting my balls for the most retarded thing on earth, I can't even believe that. And you feel that way because you really feel the pull of it's like the emotions, whereas like your greater intuition, it's like, that is the dumbest thing in the whole world. Like, I can't even believe I'm suffering for this, If you feel different, then, let me know. But that's kind of, I think, one way I would put it. It's just why the what is it, penchant for trivialities is so low for INFJs. It's because you're being disturbed for such such incredibly minor things. When you could have just as well like sat home all day and like pondered the universe. I'm not saying that's what you would do necessarily, but but when your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whoever comes calling and gives you a hard time for why don't we go out to the movies, and it's just like, right? Now, if I'm wrong, whatever, you let me know, and please be an INFJ in this case. Again, that's why I think it takes somebody who would really have to understand these things about your process, because it's a very weird process. I'm not saying it's, listen, I'm not saying it's a good thing. But I'm not saying it's a bad thing either. That's what I definitely want some people to understand, especially if you're, just kind of getting started in all this, and you're, maybe kind of down on yourself or whatever. Trust me, I've been there. I still am there sometimes. Part of, just kind of getting philosophical on this is just in part kind of one way of reminding myself that, hey, sometimes it's hard, and, hey, you are special, and that's good, and it's can be bad too, but, it is what it is. So again, it's a subjective thing, the internal thinking. So it's just really lots of processing, and the thing is, it's all, that's the intuition, and the thinking is what's on the inside. So again, without any objective external factor to trigger emotions. And INFJ is essentially not very emotional, right? Left to our own devices, we're not like, it has to be about somebody else. So chew on that for a minute. Anyways, now finally we get to the last function, which is external sensing. Now that's our only other objective, external function, and it happens to be pretty crappy. Not saying it's not useful or can't be useful, but it's like the only real time function that we have apart from external emotions, external feeling, sorry. But it just happens to be the crappiest one. And this is why I think that INFJs, or at least in my experience, don't really take a whole lot of action. You can take a little bit of action and go and kind of get get a lot of leverage out of it. You know what I mean? So, whereas somebody with primary external sensation would just kind of have to go from one thing to another, like one location, one project, one whatever, just again and then boom, 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 just bouncing off the walls. An INFJ would, they would just do a little bit, and then they would, essentially archive that with their internal thinking and their internal intuition. And hopefully, of course, there would have been some external feeling component to the whole process as well, since that's essentially a very big factor in INFJs. But of course, it's also, external feeling is also a very wild component. But being our biggest objective function, it is quite wild, quite chaotic, and all that stuff. But we managed to synthesize and fuse a lot of stuff out of those things. We get a lot of leverage from very little in the real world, if that makes sense. We can just kind of, I always kind of go with the metaphor of fusion, like nuclear fusion. If you just took two small atoms and just fused them together, it's just, you can get, or I don't know how many it takes. I'm not going to pretend like I know. But you get the point. It's just you get a massive amount of energy. So do little and get more is kind of, you could say an INFJ's strong point. But of course, in the real world, this just isn't very. Again, it's not practical, and it just seems kind of boring. I mean, let's just be honest about how it's probably seems. It's just kind of like, what do you mean? Again, you don't want to go to the movies, you don't want to go to the ball game, you want to do this, you don't want to do that. But like, what do you want to do? Like, well, we can cook and stay home. Like, yeah, it's just boring, right? But there it is. In fact, while I'm cooking and you stay home with me, like maybe if you could talk a little less, and I don't know, right? Because it just, the stimulus, all the doing is just exhausting to I think to INFJs. Now I think INFJs can benefit in some very controlled physical things. Like for me personally, I really do enjoy going to the gym and stuff like that. But I reserve. It's where I reserve the right to stop at any given time. Whereas some people, they just gotta have one thing after another, and so no denying that we do need, it is important for us to get the external sensation, to be sure. It just happens to be our weakest function. It's almost like, it's just like, what do I want to say? It's like, imagine having this amazing camera, but the lens was just like a pinhole wide, and so you could only just capture like just this tiny bit from time to time. But once you did, like you just took in a little bit of light or whatever, that's all you needed, and the camera would just kind of produce these amazingly huge incredible pictures that maybe like no one had ever seen before. And all you need is just that little pinhole of opening. That's the external sensation that we have. Like, we just need like a little bit. And unfortunately, the world, whether it's your job or your relationships, the world just, you got to be there Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and it's like, no, dude, can't I just go like once a day, 1 hour a day? That's enough. I'm out. Maybe that's even too much. But we're forced to work in that. In the real world, and if you're lucky, you kind of design your own life, and maybe whether you're self-employed, that's pretty much what I did. That's the route I took, and I've been self-employed almost all my life, and I've been single most of my life too, because the fact is I've kind of decided to make things work my way. And it's tough. There's no easy answer, unfortunately. There's always some sacrifice, and I certainly find myself wondering, like, well, could I have done it differently or whatever? But I know myself well enough to know that I probably couldn't have done it too differently, at least not happily, and led the kind of life I would like. But anyways, that's it turns out this is over half an hour now, and I want to thank you for listening to me kind of ramble on about this. It's just kind of getting stuff out of my head, and wanted to see maybe if you're an INFJ, or even if you have if you're a different type that you have, but you share a certain functions, you're perfectly welcome to talk about that. I'm a strong believer in the functions, and not just, well, I'm INFJ, so I'm a feeling type. I think that's a great start. That's how I started, but it really didn't help until I um, really recognized the functions, and that's also, I think, what is able to distinguish us from. I could easily have mistyped myself as INFP, or I don't know, maybe even INTJ. Nah, probably not, but um, but yeah, it's a good way to get into some more nitty gritty of the Myers-Briggs stuff. And by the way, I don't know everything either. There's some certain things that I may be off with my lingo when I talk about, for example, subject-object stuff. That's a little bit advanced for me, at least with the kind of the lingo and stuff. So if you happen to know more about that, please don't come screaming to me that I'm such an idiot. uh, because I don't know, I'm doing my best to explain things, but it might be a little off. I don't know. I can't remember actually. But I hope that you get the gist, and I guess I'm just going to wind it down here. Maybe I'll do some more stuff in the future if we'll just see how this goes. So thanks again, and have a good one.